Hello and welcome to the 8-man hard mode Writhing Horror boss fight guide. My name's Hayete, and today we'll be going over everything you need to know to successfully complete the first fight in the Terror from Beyond operation. For this encounter, we suggest you bring a standard composition of 2 tanks, 4 DPS, and 2 healers. Note that any class composition will be more than capable of beating this fight. So let's discuss the DPS requirements for this fight. The encounter has an enrage time of 5 minutes and 45 seconds. Aside from the boss itself, there are 3 different adds you'll encounter during this fight. The following is the individual health for each add, including the boss itself, and a multiplier denoting the max number of each add you can potentially encounter up to enrage. For analytical purposes, we've excluded the Twisted Spawn from this analysis. Multiplying each individual health total by its multiplier and summing them up, we find a total health of 6,780,393. Dividing this number by our enrage time gives a total DPS requirement of 19,654. Since your tank should be capable of pulling at least 1,500 DPS apiece, this can be adjusted by 3,000 DPS for a new total DPS requirement of 16,654. Dividing this number by our number of DPS, we find an individual DPS requirement of 4,164. Multiplying this number by our enrage time gives an individual damage responsibility of 1,436,349. This is the number you'll want to push your total damage done to if you're a DPS player. Keep in mind, however, that these are figures based on the minimum requirement to beat the fight. Your own DPS and damage done should be, and probably will be, higher than this. So let's move now to mechanics. Number 1. Incubation. Incubation is a stacking debuff applied by the Writhing Horror that lasts 15 seconds. Additionally, stacks are applied approximately every 12 seconds. At 10 stacks, 10 foul offspring will immediately spawn. If at any point this debuff falls off the player holding it, foul offspring will spawn. The number of adds that spawn directly relates to the number of stacks that fell off the player. Number 2. Recently implanted. This is a 30-second debuff applied as incubation expires. For every stack of incubation gained while this debuff is active, the player will take roughly 52,000 damage per stack unmitigated. Number 3. Foul offspring. These adds again directly spawn off of incubation. When active, they maintain a buff called Angry Spawn, which affords a huge increase to damage done. Number 4. Corrosive Slime. Corrosive Slime is a damage over time debuff gained by a random raid member that lasts for 1 minute. This debuff is first applied 12 seconds after the fight is initiated, and every 30 seconds beyond that point. This debuff is cleansable, and upon doing so, will leave a yellow AoE circle on the ground for the remainder of the original 60-second duration. Any player inside this yellow circle will take damage over time. Number 5. Jealous Mel. This add will spawn 45 seconds after the fight is initiated, and every 90 seconds thereafter. This add has a frontal cleave knockback that you should be aware of. Number 6. Calming Pheromone. This is a debuff gained by the first player to place themselves in the red pheromone circle. Calming Pheromone effectively attracts all foul offspring to the player holding the debuff. This debuff will remain until either you leave the circle or the circle despawns. Pheromone circles remain active for 40 seconds. Number 7. Stale Pheromones. This is a debuff gained by the player holding Calming Pheromone after leaving the red pheromone circle. This debuff lasts for 1 minute after the pheromone circle despawns. If the player holding this debuff enters another pheromone circle, they will take damage every second they remain inside of it. Number 8. Mother's Brood. The Writhing Horror gains 1 stack of Mother's Brood per offspring and Jealous Mel currently alive in the encounter. At 20 stacks, the Writhing Horror gains full Infestation, which deals 200% increased damage. Number 9. Twisted Spawns. These are adds that will start to spawn into the encounter immediately upon reaching 12% on the Writhing Horror. These adds will spawn at a rate of 1 every 5 seconds and will cast an ability called Spit, which applies acidic corrosion, a stacking internal damage over time debuff. So those are the main mechanics to know and be aware of. Counter to the slew of mechanics that exist, the strategy for this fight is really straightforward. The first thing to touch on is placement of your group. As the fight is initiated, you'll want to place your main tank here and the rest of your group throughout here. The boss itself will burrow underground and relocate to specific locations around the room periodically. The following markers denote these locations, and the number specifies the order in which these locations are moved to. As raid members gain the corrosive slime debuff, you'll want to cleanse them as soon as possible. You can either cleanse it immediately or have your players run away from designated boss locations and have it cleansed there. Either way works fine, just understand you do not want to stand in these circles if at all possible. Pheromone circle spawn locations are another thing you'll want to be aware of. These red circles will always spawn in one of several locations. These are the following locations and are easily identifiable by the flora they spawn on. When these circles spawn, you'll need to have a raid member stand inside of it. We suggest having ranged DPS rotate through these circles first, so your melee DPS can maintain max uptime on the boss. At any rate, this will cause all foul spawn adds to auto-target this player. As the adds enter into the red circle, they will gain a debuff called Calming Pheromones. This debuff significantly reduces the amount of damage these adds do. You'll then have your DPS AoE these adds down. Be sure that whoever is inside the circle does not leave it until all foul spawn adds are dead. Furthermore, ensure that once a raid member enters the circle, no other raid member enters. Either running out of the circle early or another person entering the circle will cause the adds to run rampant, doing increased damage to your raid group. In the event this mechanic gets messed up, we suggest bringing your entire raid group to the boss for AoE DPS and heals. If done properly, messing up this mechanic is easily correctable using this strategy. As the Jealous Mel spawns, you'll want to have your tank swap. Your off tank will become the main tank on the boss, and your main tank will take the Jealous Mel. We highly suggest you place the Jealous Mel against a wall. Since the Mel does a knockback, this can inadvertently cause huge issues for your raid if other players are knocked into pheromone circles or the member inside the circle knocked out of it, both which will cause the foul spawns to run rampant. By keeping the Mel face towards a wall, this will keep the Mel static and negate the possibility of messing up the pheromone circle mechanic. If at all possible, you should try and hold this add near the boss so DPS can spread dots or AoEs onto both it and the boss. You'll rinse and repeat this process until you reach 12% on the boss. At this point, the boss will enter into a burn phase where twisted spawn adds will start entering the encounter every 5 seconds. This essentially means you need to focus all DPS on the boss and kill it as quickly as possible. To better handle these adds, we suggest having your entire group stacked behind the boss for AoE heals while in burn phase. As the boss is defeated, any add still alive will violently explode, doing massive damage to anyone near them. We suggest having your off tank with the group AoE taunt just prior to the boss's death and running all of the adds away from the group. If done properly, they will explode away from the group. Otherwise, you can just stay on the boss and use defensives to help survive the explosions. So that's the fight, guys. I know it seems like quite a lot up front, but this fight is fairly simple once you see it. So if this video helped you, feel free to pay it forward and help us by dropping us a like and subscribing. If you have any questions, suggestions, tips and tricks, or think of something I may have missed, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. So until next time, guys, take care and enjoy the fight.